intelligent transportation industry and serves on the leadership circle of the Intelligent Transportation Society of America, and has developed the industry recognized Traffic 21 blog. He serves on the executive committee of the Council of University Transportation Centers, the Pennsylvania Autonomous Vehicle Policy Task Force, and the Smart Belt Coalition. Following Stan will be Mark Kopco. Mark is the director of PennDOT's Office of Transformational Technology. His duties including managing all the activities related to emerging technologies, including the deployment of connected infrastructure, the development of policies and standards, coordination with stakeholders, and the authorization of automated vehicle testers, platooning operations, and automated work zone vehicle. He co-chairs the AASHTO CAV working group. He chairs the Smart Belt Coalition. He sits on the Eastern Transportation CAV leadership team and represents Pennsylvania on numerous national working groups and committees. He is also the lead deployment of the Pennsylvania Safety Task Force and research track. He oversees the Smart City initiatives, manages multiple university-led initiatives, and supports activities related to UAS, Hyperloop, the broadband, the mileage-based user fee, and electric vehicles. So if we don't have the answer today, the answer may not exist. So with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Stan Caldwell. Stan, take it away.
Thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad to be on with Mark as well. I think Pennsylvania, and particularly PennDOT's very fortunate to have his leadership. Among all the accolades you mentioned, he really is a national leader in this, and along with Secretary Gramian and previously Secretary Richards, really Pennsylvania is seen as a leader in this area, and it's fortunate for us because it's not just helping the residents, but it's also really helping the industry grow, particularly from our perspective here in the western part of the state. So it's exciting to finally see this industry really thriving. So as Tim mentioned, I curate the Smart Transportation Dispatch, which is a blog that comes out also as a weekly newsletter, just tracking all the different trends in the industry. And I'll be able to give you some information on, if you don't have access to that now, how to follow that. So at Carnegie Mellon University, as Tim mentioned, I run both the Traffic 21 Institute and our Mobility 21 National University Transportation Center. Actually, a partner in that is the University of Pennsylvania in the eastern part of the state, along with Ohio State University and the Community College of Allegheny County. So we're looking at this, not just the technology, but also the policy and the workforce implications of all these new disruptive technologies. And my research is in the area of really looking at what are the trends that are affecting the disruptive transportation technologies that we're seeing today. And these disruptive technologies are vehicle automation, connected vehicles, electric vehicles, and even novel modes of transportation, including things like Hyperloop and other novel modes, but also shared use technology. So we're seeing all these different technologies occurring on parallel paths. And so automated vehicle technologies on a certain path with certain technology and market drivers, but so is electric vehicles and connected vehicles and shared vehicles. So it's not just looking at one industry and its disruptors, but how they're all affecting each other on their own parallel paths. And so what I've identified kind of over the last 10 years of tracking a lot of these disruptive technologies is that there's some core trends that are driving intelligent transportation systems in general. And number one is the sensors that are out in the field. We're starting to see a lot more inexpensive sensors, not just on the infrastructure and not just on our vehicles, but now on our persons with all the smartphones that we're carrying. We're becoming sensors in the field as well, just as travelers. And we're able to then apply a lot of data analytics with the information that's coming off of all those sensors. And that's both real-time data analytics and predictive analytics. And that's where we're starting to see some kind of exciting innovations, is on the prediction of that data. And then we see a lot of developments from the transportation world into cyber physical systems, meaning that now that our physical systems and our physical like the highways or anything else are both sensed and connected, we're able to apply to a lot of these physical systems as well. And now that with edge computing, meaning that the computing can actually happen on the sensors themselves and in the field, we're not even relying as much on cloud computing as we were in the past, and definitely not centralized computing. But a lot of this computing is happening on the edge, which is now even further enabled through the Internet of Things, where all these sensors in the field will be able to do a lot of their own computing on themselves or at the edge, and then communicate with the other sensors in the field. And that's being driven by 5G and advanced wireless technology. So a lot of these, kind of buzzwords that you're hearing in the media are really driving the core trends in intelligent transportation system technologies. But today, Tim asked me to kind of focus on particularly automation, vehicle automation, and particularly just vehicle automation since COVID-19, and what are the trends and what's happening in the industry, and because it's really a dynamic industry, but with COVID-19, it's just been so dynamic since March. And so I'm just going to focus really on what's happening now and how that's going to affect what's going to happen, what we're going to see in the future as far as the deployment of vehicle automation. So, of course, through the Society of Automotive Engineers, we have our standard levels of vehicle automation. And, right now we're seeing level 2 vehicles out there commercially, but we're kind of on the cusp of starting to see level 3 vehicles. And if you see on this chart, there's kind of a subtle difference between 2 and 3. And between 2 and 3, the human has 2 hands on the wheels, and number 3, the human only has 1 hand on the wheel. And under the description, it's small, but it says, drivers necessary but not required to monitor the environment. So that's where the engineers start to get a little nervous, because when you start to allow the driver to not pay full attention on the road, that means there's a lot more reliance on the system themselves. But this is the the frontier that we're starting to cross right now from the commercial side. And of course, we have a lot of, level 4, almost to level 5 vehicles on the road with automated shuttles, essentially vehicles that are in a pretty confined environment. And we're also seeing that with things like our delivery vehicles, which we'll talk about. One point about this that we are seeing now, even with these early levels of automation, even because we already have data on level 1 automated features that are out there on the roadways, because we argue that we already have automated vehicles. We have vehicles that park for themselves, and we have vehicles that stop for themselves, and these are all levels of automation. And through the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, their data is already showing that this is improving safety in the field now. One of my colleagues, Corey Harper, did some research on just the level 1 automation, showing 3.5% reduction as well, but also not just the specific safety numbers, but also analysis that shows cost savings. And so it's demonstrating that these levels of automation are not just saving lives, but they're also reducing costs, in both cost of the equipment themselves, but also the general social costs. So we are already seeing benefits in the field. And I think that as more automation comes into fleets of vehicles and matures, we're just going to see that increasing more and more. And I've always said we're going to look back one day and say, when did we ever stop driving, and not really be able to know. Because, you know, if you go back to the poll that the first polling question that was mentioned, where 75% of the people said they were above average drivers. So that means statistically, 25% of you are wrong, because half of the drivers should be above average and half below. But we all perceive ourselves as the good driver, and everyone else out there is just, you know, is either driving too fast or too slow, and we're the good ones. Now, when we talk about this level 3 automation, you know, it was actually kind of surprisingly, just out in the news a few weeks ago, Mercedes-Benz kind of came out of nowhere in saying that they expect to be deploying level 3 commercial vehicles, you know, coming out as early as 2021. And which was, but they did put a caveat on there pending their legal approval. And then also Tesla Autopilot, you know, has been usually classified somewhere between level 2 and level 3, you know, closer to the level 2, because it really requires human attention at all times. And we've seen that with various crashes of Tesla vehicles using autopilot when they're not paying attention. But you know, per Elon Musk, you know, every quarter or so we get a tweet out from him claiming that they're very close to level 5 and it's inevitable. But we've been hearing for that for quite some time. But this, you know, this step to level 3 may come sooner than we think, particularly with Mercedes coming out with that. That was kind of a surprise. We're also starting to see a lot of industry collaboration. Underwriters Laboratories UL 4600 worked with a CMU spinoff called EdgeCase on standards for safety evaluation of autonomous products, particularly autonomous vehicles, and came out with a standard around this. And so this is what they call building the safety case for autonomous vehicles. This helps regulators to be able to track how safe autonomous vehicles are from the claims that the companies are making. Also, Society of Automotive Engineers has a very rigorous automated vehicle safety consortium. The 5G Automotive Association has a very broad base of companies looking at 5G technology and how that's advancing not just connected vehicle technology, but automated vehicle technology. There's an industry consortium called PAVE that is really focused on automated vehicle education. The U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao has really challenged the industry that, look, and this comes to the third question on the poll, you know, that it's up to the industry to make sure that the public is comfortable with automated vehicles. And if the industry cannot convince the public of the safety of these vehicles, then you know, the market's not going to thrive. And then also for automated driver assistance program or systems, there's lots of different terminology in the industry right now. So when you buy a vehicle, and whether it says autopilot or whatever type of system it has, there's a lot of different impressions that people have of those systems. And so it's very confusing to consumers of what these automated systems, whether it's lane change or emergency braking or driver assist. And so AAA, SAE, Consumer Reports, JD Powers, National Safety Council, all these groups got together and agreed on a standard terminology led by AAA on these systems. So we think that will really help from the consumer standpoint. And this was supported by US DOT as well. It wasn't directed by NHTSA, which is good. So again, it's really identifying that the industry is starting to collaborate. But with that said, we're also seeing, and I think we're not going to get full industry collaboration on a lot of this until the industry settles down. And meaning settles down where we really kind of emerge who the leaders are in this industry, because what you originally had was, traditional, we'll call it Detroit, the traditional, automakers, both domestic and international, along with, Silicon Valley, which is all the startup organizations. And those were, originally 9 years ago, two separate entities on two separate tracks. And then all of a sudden, you've had this kind of conflict in the beginning with them, and then now all this different collaboration, and that continues to happen. So we're just, this is, kind of indicative, more of a high school dance here, where you have, Mercedes-Benz and BMW dissolve their partnership, and then Mercedes-Benz partners with NVIDIA on their AV platform. Then Hyundai and Aptiv just formed Motional right here in Pittsburgh. And Yandex, the Russian AV firm, and Uber spin-off AV unit. And Volkswagen breaks with Aurora, and then Ford and Volkswagen partner on AV technology with Argo AI, another Pennsylvania company now valued at $7.5 billion. And then Toyota invests in Pony AI. And so we're still seeing, and this is just a very small snapshot, literally every week I'm posting on some new partnerships, business relationships happening in the industry. So, and again, it is among the traditional automakers and the startups, and it's really still a dynamic shuffling. So I don't see any time in the near future kind of a settling down of, where we can identify, here's the big three that are driving the industry. From the federal government side, we're seeing this, initiative still evolving from the Federal Highway Administration called CARMA, which is Cooperative Driving Automation. And what's interesting about this kind of took a lot of the connected vehicle technology efforts of the federal government, particularly Federal Highway Administration and ITS Joint Program Office, and really directed it more towards this cooperative driving automation. So not just connected vehicles where you're giving information to the human driver, but when these vehicles are out, start to come out on the road, how they're communicating with each other to kind of optimize their operations in the field, and also their not just their communication with the cloud and their mapping systems, but with the infrastructure as well, and other travelers on the road, such as pedestrians and cyclists. And NHTSA this summer released their AV Test Initiative, which is an interactive web tool to track all AV testing right now. So you have universities and companies and cities and states that can be involved with this. This is nowhere near yet a comprehensive system, but it is kind of the federal government's first attempt at bringing this all together in one central location for people to see what's happening. A lot of the states have been doing this, and Mark will get into what's happening in Pennsylvania, but this is kind of a first step from the federal government. The federal government, with this administration and the previous administration, have been reluctant to be kind of interfering with the industry, as it's been so dynamic. The other big news, and this will probably be happening in October, is a Federal Communications Commission will be reallocating the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum that was reserved for connected vehicles. This really opens up a lot of the activity for using 5G connected vehicle technology, cellular connected vehicle technology, as opposed to the dedicated short-range communications radio with connected vehicle technology. Also, we're just kind of seeing this general shift this year away, with attention away from the autonomous vehicle taxis to freight delivery, through sidewalk type delivery vehicles all the way to large trucks, and so we're seeing a lot more in the area of package delivery, whether it's through things like the vans with relationship with Waymo and UPS, or Amazon, acquiring Zoox and all the different types of sidewalk vehicles that are out, sidewalk delivery vehicles that we're seeing deployed worldwide. From the autonomous trucking, or from the trucking side, we're starting to see a lot more companies focusing on deployment of heavy-duty trucks, and this has been kind of a surprise. And again, the shift moving away from just the autonomous taxis to this. And here's just some examples that have been happening recently between Daimler and Torque Robotics and Waymo and Too Simple, 4U Trucking and Trunk, and Locomation, again, another company that's right here in Pennsylvania. So a lot of activity just coming out this year, really focusing on highway automation. And sometimes that's a little easier because you just have limited, a lot more limited external issues on a highway than you do on a city street. We saw a lot of deployments this summer with, and in the early COVID time of the spring, with automated vehicles responding to COVID-19. We saw this in Columbus with Easy Mile shuttles and GM Cruise, and Noro delivering medical supplies and food in California. Beep and Navia, actually delivering COVID tests without humans in the vehicles in Florida at the Mayo Clinic, and in Wuhan, vehicles actually disinfecting the roads and delivering medical supplies. So a lot of this really kind of brought to the attention that, hey, if we are having issues with safety of people and vehicles, automated vehicles are set up to do that very well. CMU originally did that with, our first autonomous vehicle was in the 3 Mile Island nuclear disaster. So, we saw a lot of these applications come to light here. And then, of course, from the infrastructure side, we actually saw the first, plans of a dedicated road for autonomous vehicles in Michigan from Ann Arbor to Detroit, and also back to this whole issue of cellular vehicle to everything technology, connected vehicle technology. We're seeing both national and domestic deployments really ramping up, showing the viability of this as the 5G network rolls out. So I'll be happy to take questions. We'll let Mark proceed next, and I'll be happy to take questions afterwards. I just stopped sharing, Mark. Are you able to pull up your screen?
And Mark, in the meantime, as you pull up your screen here, let me run the second poll for everybody. I have to close that, move to the second poll timeline. There you go. We'll leave this open. When do you believe fully autonomous vehicles will be in your marketplace? These are great. 10 to 15 years. Well, 5 years is catching up. Great, we'll leave it open for a couple more seconds here. People coming back to their computer. There we go. And I'm gonna be closing the poll. There we go, we'll end the poll, and we'll share the results. And there you go, Mark, that's what people think it is. So you get to talk about that.
Great.
Stop sharing the results. I'll close this down, and it's all yours, Mark.
Can you see my screen, just to verify?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. As previously mentioned, my name is Mark Kopco. I'm the director of PennDOT's Transformational Technology Program. So anything most people equate to emerging transportation within transportation, that technology falls into my office. So I was asked here today to basically touch on looking a lot towards the municipal side of what should you be considering and what should you be doing and what's going on in the state, just to make sure everyone's aware. And so, we've actually had this conversation with numerous times with numerous different parties, regardless of whether or not it's a local municipality or a planning organization or a consulting firm or an outside party of, well, what should I be doing to prepare? And we basically came up with a 5-step approach, and it's basically the same approach that we take here at PennDOT. And we think that if you follow this high-level approach, it's probably the best and the safest way to actually get involved. It's important to understand that as this technology progresses and moves, there's going to be a lot of variables. There's going to be a lot of changes. You'll have to pivot. So, I don't want to dive right into the deep end, but it's also important knowing that the impact of this technology, going over things that Stan discussed about the advancements of industry and how things are coming, and even with our poll question where folks are saying that they expect to see predominantly in 10 to 15 years, which is not actually a bad guess at all. But we also have to remember that the gears of government don't exactly move the fastest at times, and that's for a reason. But when we start to look at this technology, knowing that you got to start sooner than later, knowing that it's going to take time and knowing that there's going to be changes along the way so that we are prepared. So our 5-step approach is pretty straightforward. Step 1, and the most basic thing that we always recommend to someone is identify a champion. Just have someone stay abreast of everything that's going on. It doesn't have to be their full-time job, but just find someone who it seems like it's a good fit, or someone who has a passion, or just someone that it makes sense in their current position where they can just keep a finger on the pulse. It's going to help out a lot. And with that, you want to stay informed. And that's one of the things that Stan and I are here to help out with today, is just to give you an idea of what's happening in the industry, and then from my standpoint, to give you an idea of what's happening here in the Commonwealth. As we proceed forward, it's important to understand the implications, especially implications for your respective organization. As this technology progresses and as we start to see it, from a transportation standpoint, a lot of people equate this to a paradigm shift potential. This is not necessarily something new, like a next step in ITS or something like that along the lines. This has far greater reach within an organization, and it's going to be potentially, once it's in place and you actually have a mass market penetration, this could be something that hits all facets. So it's probably easier to equate this as computers being introduced into your workplace, and how that changed how your day-to-day operations were, as what this would actually be equated to, because it changes all facets. You take out that human element, that's everything that we base it around. So how we do roads, how we design bridges, how we design signs, how we license drivers, how we do long-range planning with actual movements, and trying to figure out just how people transition within respective environments. Everything will potentially change with this technology. Now, how long will it take for that to change? That's the big question, but we understand that just simply taking out the human element will have implications. So it's important to start working towards this, start small, work with partners. Everyone is learning this as they go. It's new to everyone. Of course, you have folks who have been doing this a lot longer than others, such as Carnegie Mellon University, being at the forefront of this technology and being a birthplace for this technology. But even with that, we're still getting to uncharted territory here every day. So don't go down this path alone. It makes sense to work with other partners, whether it be both in the private sector, public sector. It just helps you make sure that you don't go down necessarily a dead end. Finally, just to come up and develop a plan. You want to make sure that you have a consistent approach. You want to understand what those implications are. How can you actually then relay that and come up with a clear plan to start to address that? So you can follow those 5 basic steps and just, work small, work slowly towards that. I think it'll start to put you in a good position. So basically, my slides will change here. Okay. One of the things I want to discuss here quick is just, what is going on here in the Commonwealth. Stan mentioned, that we're trying to be a national leaders. We're here at the forefront. Definitely appreciate any praise that PennDOT gets, but we also have to make sure that we share that back, that Pennsylvania is at the forefront because of Carnegie Mellon University and other fine academic institutions such as theirs. This is why industry comes here to Pennsylvania. We're not Arizona, we're not Texas, We don't have perfectly flat roads for long stretches. We don't have perfect weather the majority of the days. We get snow, we have potholes, we have aging infrastructure. It's not ideal, but companies are here not only because that environment offers a challenge, but because we have that workforce that drives that. We have the academic institutions such as Carnegie Mellon University and Penn State and other institutions that are putting out the next wave of the workforce that are innovative and can have that foresight towards the future. And that's what these companies want, and that's why they're here. So we actually have 9 authorized testers here in the Commonwealth. They're listed in order of which they received authorization there on the side. Stan mentioned a lot of them, such as Aurora, Qualcomm, Carnegie Mellon, Uber, Argo, Motional, Plus AI, Locomation, and NVIDIA. And we are quite pleased to see the broad representation. We have some companies that are focused more on trucking, some that are more focused on passengers, vehicles, some that are looking more towards a mobility services, such as an Uber and a Lyft model. It goes across the gauntlet, and with that also, we also have a pretty robust industry that backs that up. So with this, you can see the map here to give you an idea. We actually have, when we ask these testers for their authorization, they have to tell us where they're expected to test. And so this is what we mapped out. And you'll see here that we have 56 of our 67 counties have testers that have identified that they'll be operating there. Now, a lot of these are also the limited access interstate national highway system, but it still spreads out around the state. It's not just in Pittsburgh, it's not just in Philly. There is some spread with things. Actually, 42% of our counties actually have 2 or more testers. So it is occurring across the state. It's not just necessarily one hub. Clearly, Pittsburgh is a hub, but it's also spreads out beyond that. So to try and address that here in PennDOT, what we tried to do is make sure that we had a pretty comprehensive structure within our organization. So we have a couple of outside groups that we work with. One is our Highly Automated Vehicle Advisory Committee. This is required by statute. That also works closely with our AV task force that's been in place since 2016. We have a variety of stakeholders within that. I believe we're upwards of around 75 different stakeholders within that. And that's just to give us a lot of industry coordinations and feedback. And then to tie that in, we actually have an AV senior leadership team within PennDOT, a variety of stakeholders from different deputates. We meet bi-weekly to discuss. This is where we develop a lot of our policies, but we have close coordination between these groups. And that's very important going forward because not one organization and not one area has all the answers. So you can't just do it from just the DOT. You need to have that outside perspective. And it can't just be my office in PennDOT. It's important that we have that coordination with driver and vehicle services, with multimodal, with planning, with highways, with policy, with legal. So it's important to realize it's not just one group. It affects everyone. You know, it's good to have a champion, but you also have to have that coordination. So that's how we structured ours. And here it gives you an idea of our task force, basically broken up in 4 categories: public sector, from both the federal, state, and local levels, including local municipalities and planning organizations, our academic partners, our advocacy partners. It's very important that we get a variety of perspectives. We would love to have everyone have an opportunity to voice their say. That's just not feasible. So for things like trying to get the general public, we look towards groups like AAA or AARP. From the trucking community, we look towards ATA and PMTA. So trying to tie in these advocacy and professional organizations as a way to actually share information with us. And then also importantly, we have our industry partners, both our traditional OEMs and our more of our technology type of companies. Then you have organizations like SAE, and then you have more specialized developers such as Peloton or rural trucking equipment that are doing very specific automated functions, whether it be platooning or autonomous truck mounted attenuators. So just trying to get a variety of input. That's why we try to set this up, because it's important not to operate within a bubble. It's important to hear all these perspectives. And then we have our advisory committee I mentioned before. So the advisory committee identifies recommendations for Pennsylvania with the purpose of enhancing safety the safe and efficient movement of people and goods by advancing connected and automated vehicle technology. That's our overall mission. With that, we have a variety of stakeholders, both that are required from state side, secretaries from numerous organizations, PennDOT, Turnpike, state police, insurance, labor and industry, community and economic development. And then we also have outside partners, so those representing academia or traditional OEMs or technology companies, platooning operators, labor. We have both AFL, CIO, and the Teamsters on. That's very important to us. Insurance, we have representation from the insurance industry. We have representation, for the general public, and that's through AAA. So there's a variety of positions that are appointed by the governor. We identified 4 main focus areas after our year 1 report, which was actually just posted to our website, and I believe we'll be issuing a press release tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. With that, we're looking at 4 main areas. One is stakeholder and public education. Stan touched on this. There's a lot of misconceptions with this technology. And a lot of this is also due to the nomenclature that goes along with it, or just the branding that some people are doing with it. And so we tend to find, and it was refreshing to see the poll, that when we talk to a lot of people, it tends to be 2 extremes. It's either this technology is going to be here any day now, and then corresponding with that, that's either going to take everyone's jobs or potentially kill everyone. Clearly not the case. Or there's this will never happen. Also probably very unlikely, knowing that the amount of money that's being invested in this industry. Stan mentioning the testing companies in Pennsylvania that have multi-billion-dollar evaluations, and that's across the board with a lot of these leading testing companies, not only in the United States, but globally. It's going to happen at some point. How long it takes us to get there, that's the big question. And frankly, if you had an answer, you'd probably be a very rich person. But we're working towards that. But it's very important that people understand this. So with that, there's a lot of misconceptions, and people make assumptions, and a lot of people just don't have experience with these AVs. Most people never ridden one. Most people don't necessarily interact with them unless you're in certain hotspot areas like Pittsburgh or San Francisco, or Phoenix. There's a variety of people who experience in those environments, but not elsewhere. And so we actually start to see that in actual polling. So if you look at AAA and other national polls, it tends to be around 2/3 of Americans, or 60% of Americans, do not have a favorable view of automated vehicles. It's more they would not ride in them. There's fear associated with that. Meanwhile, you have organizations like Bike PGH, the Pittsburgh Bike Advocacy Group out in the city, that has performed 2 polls on AVs over the years, both with the membership and opening it up to the larger groups. And they found the opposite. In Pittsburgh, it tends to be people having more comfort. Around 70% had a more positive view towards the AVs. So this is one of those situations where when we look at this, we try to determine what causes that. We equate it right now to seeing is believing type of thing. So once you start to experience it and you realize that, okay, it's not that scary, it's here. Yes, it's still being tested. Yes, there's still a distance it has to go. Yes, there's times you ride next to it on the road, you can see that it's not perfect, but there's other times you're riding next to it on the road and you see no issues. So you understand that it's the development process, it takes time, and it's being done. So, it's important to have the education so at least people have an understanding of what's going on, so you can have your own informed decisions to make without basing it off of any type of biases that you might read or come up with without having any actual practical background. Workforce is very important. We understand that there is going to be workforce implications. There will be jobs that will disappear associated with this technology, and there will be jobs that will be created because of this technology. One of the things that's important right now is to understand that it's not often that you can see that coming. We know that this is coming. We know that this technology is developing, and there will be workforce implications. It gives us time to start to come up with a plan and start to react and make sure our workforce, our existing workforce, can pivot where it makes sense. Our incoming workforce can be trained to make sure that they're competitive in this environment. It's just important to keep that in mind. It's going to have huge implications some point in the future. It's also important we're trying to do a legal assessment, understanding what are the implications on our vehicle code. It's a very complex vehicle code. Although it's newer, it's some of the oldest vehicle code laws in the country. And frankly, it's something that's never taken into account. We have far more references to herded and ridden animals within our vehicle code than anything related to AVs. And that's nothing against those that actually developed it. It's just, this was science fiction or something that you never thought about for decades. And now it's here and it's knocking on the door. And it's making us think of things through. We're also looking at how can you look at this technology, such as platooning transit vehicles, to aid along the way to make sure that we're in a position to leverage this technology to maybe supplement and enhance some of our existing transit services. So one of the things that we did that the group might find interesting is we did a local government survey. We did an outreach. We worked with the associations, PSATs, the Boroughs Association, municipal leagues, the county associations, trying to reach out to local governments asking about some specific questions related to emerging technology. We had a little over 400 responses. And some of the questions we asked is such as, do you have any does your organization have any ordinances, resolutions, executive directives related to automated vehicles? And this is one that really stood out to us, is 13 municipalities said yes. Pittsburgh was one, but also Little Marion Township was one, and of course, 11 others. And the thing that was interesting to us is that this is going to be one of two things. One, it could be that, wow, there actually are 13 municipalities that have ordinances, resolutions, or executive directives that we just didn't know about. And that just emphasizes the need to have closer relationships with local municipalities. So that's one option. The other option is that despite us actually describing up front in our survey what an automated vehicle is and trying to be descriptive so not to avoid confusion, people still became confused and said yes. And that goes back to the education component. So regardless of whether or not it is actually 13 or not, we definitely gained a lesson learned here. And so, that's one of the things that we're trying to take away. We do see that most organizations are not doing anything initiatives-wise, except for Pittsburgh related to this, but there's those that are starting to look at it, which is good. We start to see if anyone has engaged or have any organizations engaged their citizens. And there's a couple, and what we're trying to do is follow up with these organizations, find out details about that, and at least document. So what did the citizens want to know, and what are you trying to tell your citizens to help, so we can come up with consistent messaging and any type of tools or help that we can provide to assist in the education process or answering questions. And finally, we asked basic questions of, do you want more information, and would you like to be engaged more with the department? And overwhelmingly, a wide variety of organizations that said yes. And so right now we're going through the process, and we're going to work and figure out best ways to start to engage folks. One thing to note, we do have an automated vehicle testing guidance. Department controls authorization right now within the Commonwealth through this guidance. Places like the city of Pittsburgh use this as a foundation to build upon theirs. It's their first step. We actually just updated our guidance, our 2.0. Once again, that will be part of the press release that will be going out tomorrow, announcing that we're very pleased with this. So instead of looking at the technology, which is not necessarily a forte of any DOT, we try to focus more on the human element. So driver training, driver education, the safety culture within an organization. That's the type of stuff that we try to focus on. We're developing an incident response plan here in Pennsylvania. So if something ever does occur, similar to the incident in Tempe, we have a consistent approach statewide so that we're not caught off guard, so that we can have all the first responders, all the appropriate parties all on the same page, following this incident response plan, following the tools that we're producing with this. We're hoping to have this in place here this fall. We have one piece of automated vehicle legislation, Act 117, allows for three things. It created that highly automated vehicle advisory committee I mentioned. It allows for platooning of 2 or 3 military vehicles, transit vehicles, or motor carriers. So this is where you have trucks driving with tighter headways to try and improve fuel efficiencies, but the acceleration and braking is coordinated between the two. So they're braking and accelerating simultaneously, so you're keeping that same consistent gap in between. And the last one, it allows for automated work zone vehicles. So this is your automated crash truck. So you can take out that human element in the vehicle that's designed to be impacted if someone tries to enter into a work zone. So with that, the department's actually looking right now, we're going through the process of trying to procure one. Stan mentioned about these, about a couple technologies out there, automated shuttles and more of these sidewalk delivery vehicles. So we actually have automated shuttle bill. It's in the House. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to move here this year, but the big one is Senate Bill 1199. It is actually going to be on the voting block here in the House Transportation Committee today. It has already made it through the Senate and the Senate floor. So it's going to the House. There has been amendments. So if it makes out committee today and out of the House floor, it will have to go back to the Senate. But this bill is definitely moving. So this would allow for these robotic automated sidewalk delivery devices, such as the ones you see in the bottom left. We have a federal grant that we're working on here, looking at the safe integration of automated vehicles and work zones. And we have a variety of partners. This was an $8.4 million grant we just received from the feds. Just finalizing the legal agreement now, but basically trying to figure out how can we have automated vehicles safely operate in a work zone they never encountered before. So no prep work, nothing like that, no pre-mapping or anything like that. So trying to come up with different approaches, looking at connectivity, things that aid machine visioning, things to help out with HD mapping, where that's something the department might be able to provide, and with that, potentially a P3 opportunity in the future. But with that, we're working with a wide variety of partners, trying to make sure that we look at this because we know it's a challenging point. And the lessons that we learn out of this with looking towards higher automation can also be applicable to the lower automation that Stan mentioned, these ADAS systems. So the stuff that you're used to with adaptive cruise control or lane keeping technology, or things like you see in a Tesla autopilot, to make sure that they can still safely function in a work zone. So it's not just to the future, but we can take this information and use it today. We have an automated vehicle summit. Unfortunately, we had to cancel it this year, but it will be next year in Pittsburgh right now. So October 25th through 27th. Leading up to that, we'll be doing an event series. So we'll be doing webinars, and assuming the global health climate changes, potentially in-person events next year as well. If not, there will be webinars also leading up to the summit. So keep an eye out for that. And the last thing, the last two things to just talk about is, one of the things that we've been trying to do is connected vehicle deployments. A lot of this is up in the air here, waiting on the FCC. But we do have a wide variety of signalized intersections equipped with roadside units, both in the Pittsburgh region and in Harrisburg. There was plans for the Philadelphia region, but a lot of this we're going to wait and see what the FCC decides to do here. And finally, we have a connected and automated vehicle strategic plan. It's on our website. Very much I encourage people to go look at it. It was designed to look for a statewide approach, so it's not necessarily all PennDOT specific. It's designed in such a way that you still use pieces of this for whatever organization, whether it be a local municipality or a planning organization or whatever within the Commonwealth, and use this as a foundation and start to build from. So it's another tool that's out there that we want people to be aware of. And with that, I think we're moving into the Q&A portion.
Great, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Stan. Before we go into the Q&A here, let me put up the last and final poll here. Oops. Working on here. Here we go. We'll launch this poll. How likely are you to purchase a self-driving car once technology is fully developed? And I'll launch that poll, leave that open for a little while here as we go into the Q&A. I do have several questions that are here from the chat that I would like to raise. But one of the big ones that came through from several of the municipalities was, where can I find more information about ordinances? Where should the conversation reside? Should it be in our planning commission, or should it be with the supervisors directly? Should this be staff driven, or should it be driven by the committee members that are volunteers? Mark or Stan, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, so ordinances in regards to automated vehicles operating on your roadways, or what aspect, I guess, would be the question. So if it's operating on the roadways, I think a lot of what you want to look towards is PennDOT. We're going to be updating our website, penndot.gov/AV. We're providing more information there. I think, you know, if you look towards what Pittsburgh's done, you know, look what we have in place, our testing guidance. Use that as initial foundation if you need to do anything beyond that. But you know, one of the things you'll start to see is that with a lot of this technology, at least right now that's being tested, there's not much that we necessarily have to do to allow for automated vehicles to operate on our roadways from an infrastructure standpoint right now. Now, as we start to look towards mass deployment, those are things that the department's looking at. So we'll be looking to update our standards and specifications, whether it be for signal controllers or whether it be for line striping or signage. Those are the types of things that we'll try and line up with whatever the manual for uniform traffic control devices comes out with new recommendations. So I think that the big points of reference to try and get more information, I would look towards PennDOT. I'm happy to help anyway if anyone wants to reach out, and also then the federal government. So the ITS, JPO, also, you know, Federal Highway, NHTSA, they have good resources on their websites that you can start to pull some information from, and start to also see where other states are doing. Also, the National Operation Center of Excellence does a great job of showing what a variety of states are doing in this area.
I would add, from the city perspective, you might want to look to NACTO, the National Association of City Transportation Officials. From a municipal level, they seem to be the ones that are looking at this more closely, and I think they would have some resources for you. They usually represent bigger cities, but at least they're looking at it from the municipal level.
Great, thank you. Another one, this one's directed to you, Stan. You had mentioned that the reallocation of the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum opened up opportunity in a positive manner, but the American Association of State Highway and Transportation came out strongly against this move, saying that it will interfere with the already deployed roadside infrastructure relying on that spectrum. What is your opinion on that, and what are the potential positives of this move?
No, I'm sorry I misrepresented that. The positives of this is, you know, is more spectrum and bandwidth for the telecommunications industry and the cable industry. You know, they're the ones who are going to get this spectrum and be able to monetize it for telecommunications. From the transportation side, this is very devastating to the, you know, all the efforts of the connected vehicle technology industry, from the federal government to the state government efforts to local government efforts. We've invested a lot of activity and time and money into putting this on the ground in the city of Pittsburgh, and all of that dedicated short-range communication network and infrastructure is all going to be lost. So I think it's very devastating to the transportation industry, and what it will do is, you know, really impact the deployment of dedicated short-range communications radios for connected vehicle technology, and probably open up more opportunity for the cellular vehicle to X. So that's using connected vehicle technology that is based on the 5G network. So instead of it being a publicly available system, you know, it will be likely a subscription type system through the telecommunications companies, the cellular companies.
Great. This one is for both of you. What alterations to or installation of technologies along existing roadways will be needed to achieve level 5? and what changes will be needed to maintain the strategies for these roadways?
So I'll take that. You know, at the end of the day, you know, if you talk to industry, the best thing you can do to allow for an automated vehicle to operate safely and efficiently is to have a smooth road with clear pavement markings and basically what you would consider to be a pristine roadway, something that's fresh out of construction. You know, so it's kind of frustrating when, you know, you have conversations and that's all that ever comes back out of what they need from us, in the sense that that's some simplistic task, like if we could have done that, we would have done that already, but you have limited time, you have limited efforts, you have limited resources, so everything we try to prioritize our roadways. But I think that the big thing you're going to see to do for level 5, besides of the vast amount of work that's going to go into just the development of the automated driving system, is the data coming from a DOT. You know, information about plan construction, information about when roadways have changed, when there's a work zones there, information that you can have regarding assets on your roadway system. So I think asset management is going to be a critical component going forward in the future, and just sharing data back and forth. Data is going to be, if not already, one of the largest commodities that we'll have within our industry. So, you know, I think that's where you're going to see that. You know, there is still a lot of push for cooperative automation, having this connectivity, having information coming from your infrastructure to the vehicle and back and forth. You know, I think with FCC and everything, there's a lot of uncertainty there, but you can build around that. You know, you don't necessarily have to go right now and dive in and put a roadside unit on your signalized intersection and make sure you can broadcast out the current phase and timing. But what is important is to make sure that you can document the current phase and timing and pull that from your system, so that whether it's being broadcast out locally or being pushed to a cloud and having in the appropriate SAE format, that's going to be the stuff that's going to be important in the future. You know, so there's foundational steps you can start to take without necessarily committing to one technology or going down one path. But I think data is going to be the big thing in the future for the DOTs.
Yeah, I agree with Mark on that. I think to my earlier point of having the, you know, for the cyber physical systems, the more sensing that you have in the field, and this is sensing that benefits today, you know, by having a camera or a radar on your traffic signals, or being able to detect pedestrians at an intersection. I mean, this is all information that can benefit the system now, but also be sent to a vehicle, a computer-driven vehicle later. And then I just want to, you know, mention the whole, you know, perception of level 5 automation. A lot of the research I'm doing now is really focused on, you know, the fact that we don't need level 5 automation. You know, everyone's goal, you know, currently in the media has been hyped to say, when are we going to have fully autonomous vehicles? My contention is we don't need fully autonomous vehicles. If we have level 4 vehicles out there, or level 3 vehicles, or as we even talk about level 2 vehicles, these vehicles are now saving lives and improving efficiency. And this can develop into level 4 vehicle. You know, these computers are supposed to be helping, you know, people operate more safely and more efficiently. You know, they're not supposed to be made to work without people. You know, we're concerned about single occupancy vehicles. We should be very concerned about zero occupancy vehicles. You know, these vehicles are out there to serve us, not to operate on their own. And so, you know, the fixation on having level 5, that may never come to fruition, but we may get all the benefits we need from level 3, level 4 automated vehicles, where humans are always there somewhere, you know, supervising them, just like we are with elevators today.
Great, thank you. I do have, you know, I have 3 quick questions here and we'll finalize with the poll. I closed that down. Thank you very much for your participation in that. a real quick one for you, Mark. Is that Lower Marion Township, Montgomery County that you listed there as one that has ordinances?
I believe that was, yes, that's correct, based off on, we're trying to do follow-ups to verify everything that we've received within the survey results.
Okay.
To clarify that they actually do have ordinances and if they can share and things like that, because we think it's important to share that with larger groups, just so you don't recreate the wheel. But yes, I believe it's the Montgomery County one.
Okay, great. This is for both of you. How do you see the increase in the EV market relating to the increase in the AV market?
So I'll take the first crack at this. You know, I think that you'll start to see that there's a connection between those. You start to see that a lot of AV testers are even right now looking, are utilizing hybrid systems, and a lot are looking towards electric vehicle. And there's, besides the environmental benefits of doing that, there is also benefits to, my understanding, developing the actual automated driving system, because you have more consistency with regards to throttle control and a variety of other aspects with the vehicle, using electric motor and more precise control, because you have individual motors for each wheel that you can do with your automated driving system to make it more efficient, easier to try and get a consistent control with that. So I think, at least from my perspective and what I've been seeing in conversations, at the national level, is that a lot of these are going hand in hand, and a lot of people think that ultimately in the future the automated vehicle is going to be an electric vehicle, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It's important to know that, but it's definitely the way that it's moving right now.
Yeah, Mark's correct in that, and I'll just add that the the industry, what we're seeing is that, like with Ford and with Toyota and with Volvo, a lot of these ones that are developing, they're kind of new advanced technology operations, investing billions of dollars into these new facilities. Typically, they're both EV and AV facilities. So again, it's not the AV technology does not require electric vehicles, but the industry is kind of looking at these both together as their future markets and their future technologies. So that's the industry interesting aspect we're seeing from the industry trend. Tim, are you on mute, or did you have another question?
Sorry, I was on mute to manage my office space here. I apologize to everybody. I do have one more question. This is wrapped around human services and seniors. What are some of the partnerships or conversations that you may be having wrapped around with the disability community or the senior population in using the autonomous vehicles, such as wheelchair access or a movement of patients?
If I could just mention that the University of Pittsburgh was just awarded a grant from U.S. Department of Transportation looking at this in particular. There was they were awarded a University Transportation Center grant similar to the one that we have at CMU and the one at Penn State, looking at how seniors and people with disabilities will be able to interact with autonomous vehicles. And it's interesting, this was done through a collaboration with the Veterans Administration and the University of Pittsburgh. So kind of rather than coming out of Pitt's traditional transportation engineering folks, it came more out of their healthcare and Veterans Affairs operations there at the university. So that's very encouraging. And AARP has been very involved with this as well.
Yeah, just to add on to what Stan said, we try to have those conversations with a variety of groups, including the folks there at PIT and AARP. Very much of importance to the Secretary and the administration of looking at accessibility of this technology. We have to make sure that we can get the full benefits of it, of all that this technology promises. And one of the things is giving this flexibility and this sense of independence to those that have some sort of disability or condition that limits that right now. And that's what we can look at this technology to help solve. So with that, we also engage in conversations at the national level with ITS America. They're doing a lot of work within that level. We also engaged with AASHTO. They're starting to push and work with a variety of stakeholders. And we're trying to have some conversations across multiple states, looking at ways of potentially championing, especially as we start to look towards more of multimodal services potentially in the future. I think to keep this in mind.
Well, we've crossed that magical hour, and thank you everyone for staying on for a little extra time through this Q&A period. Mark and Stan, thank you very much for your insight to what you have to offer about AVs and AV development. It continues to travel at a great speed, and it's a great benefit for our community at large. Please don't forget us here in Chester County. We have a lot of people that are passionate about this, and we'd love to continue the conversation here. So as you do more public outreach, please include us and we'll get that out. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully this has been insightful. Please feel free to email John or myself if you have any follow-up questions or want additional information, as we are able to contact both Mark and Stan. Just to let everybody know, how likely are you to purchase a self-driving car once the technology is fully developed? 17% are extremely likely, 27% are very likely, and 20% are somewhat likely. And 37% say not so likely. So we're still at that margin there where we're winning more people towards the AV technology, but we're still waiting for some people on the sidelines. So again, thank you everyone for joining us, and be well and be safe. Have a great afternoon.